Is there anything more American than a night at the movies? From dazzling spectacles to the smell of popcorn, for many it was a rite of passage and the scene of many first dates. But today, tickets cost a fortune, theaters sit empty, and blockbusters flop. What went wrong? Did Hollywood drop the ball, or did the streaming giants strike a blow? On today's episode of The Infographic Show, we're revealing the real reason why nobody goes to the movies anymore. Once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away, the movie market was booming. Back in 2019, the American box office was raking in a record $11.3 billion. This was the second highest number in history, just beaten by 2018. And the fifth year in a row, the box office crossed the $11 billion mark. The year was dominated by franchises. 3 Marvel hits, 4 Disney sequels and remakes, another Star Wars installment, and even 2 R-rated thrillers cracking the top 10. But since then, the bottom has fallen out. Even 2023, the strongest of the 2020s, barely scraped $9 billion. Given the major global setbacks the market saw, it's impressive, but it's not a good sign. It's pretty clear that something has gone wrong, and it's not just vibes. People aren't going to the movies anymore, and the major Hollywood studios are feeling the pinch. And they're not the only ones. Sure, Hollywood puts up the money, but audiences have to go to the theaters to see the films. For decades, those theaters were independent businesses. Antitrust laws barred studios from owning them to prevent monopolies. The biggest chains in the United States are AMC, Cinemark, and Regal, along with the boutique Alamo Drafthouse. There are some smaller chains with a few dozen theaters, but the market today is dominated by big chain cineplexes, often with a dozen or more screens each. And more they're having trouble filling those screens. AMC has almost 600 theaters scattered throughout cities and suburbia. Many of their theaters are built into malls, and the chain is known for typically having every major movie release playing. But that hasn't kept them out of financial trouble. The company has racked up significant debt, raising fears of bankruptcy and massive theater closings. However, those fears were allayed when the company struck a debt deal in 2025 to give it time to rebound. Regal's parent company, Cineworld Group, went through a bankruptcy in 2022 and closed dozens of underperforming theaters. And Alamo exited bankruptcy in 2021. All 4 major chains are hanging on, at least for now. But behind the scenes, countless issues are brewing. As the year 2020 was dawning, things looked great. The box office was coming off its 2 best years ever, and there was a busy schedule ahead. The year opened strong with a new Bad Boys installment starring a pre-slap Will Smith and the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie both being hits. The pipeline looked stacked. A Christopher Nolan time travel thriller, Marvel's Black Widow standalone, and plenty more blockbusters ready to drop. And then history interfered. Movie theaters were the first businesses seriously impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and they didn't even have to wait for the shutdowns. As word of the virus spread, people stayed away. That meant that new releases like Pixar's Onward and Vin Diesel's superhero adventure Bloodshot flopped. The latter killed hopes for a planned superhero universe before it began. Soon after, major studios started delaying their biggest titles indefinitely, and soon the whole industry shut down. Many businesses were impacted by COVID, but only a few found it completely impossible to operate. Restaurants pivoted to delivery, but theaters, they just closed. Not only was it illegal to operate a business with large indoor crowds, but there was nothing to show. So theaters just lay empty for months, with the major companies hoping for bailouts to keep them from going bust. This triggered the bankruptcies of Regal and Alamo, but robust federal aid kept many theaters afloat in the short term. And as things started to slowly open, the picture just looked worse. States differed dramatically on when it was time to reopen, with some opening after only 2 months as the initial wave subsided. Others kept indoor businesses like movie theaters closed for 6 months or more. With this uncertainty, Hollywood decided to delay most of its movies into 2021. Only a few movies chose to enter theaters during this limited period. The big exception was Christopher Nolan's Tenet. Determined that audiences see it on the big screen, Nolan pushed for a wide release as theaters reopened in late summer 2020. But it bombed, earning just $58 million domestically, a fraction of what Dunkirk or Inception made. It wasn't a question of whether the movies would come back, but if theaters would still be there when they did. As 2021 approached, studios had major movies in the tank, and they had to decide what they were going to do with them quickly. For almost 6 months, nothing big hit theaters. With reopening uncertain, studios pivoted, releasing their films in new alternative ways. Disney was one of the first to strike, releasing the Mulan remake on its Disney Plus streaming service, but for a hefty additional fee. Later in the year, the studio would release its new Pixar movie Soul on Disney Plus for free. Warner Brothers got in on the act, streaming the critically drubbed Wonder Woman sequel on its Max platform. And all of this left the theaters out in the cold. As the first vaccines rolled out and it started to look like some form of normalcy was going to be on the table, the studios still acted with caution. In 2021, Warner Brothers shocked Hollywood. Every film that year would hit the theaters and HBO Max on the same day. The experiment gutted the box office for Dune, James Gunn's Suicide Squad, and Godzilla vs. Kong. Disney also released 2 more Pixar movies on Disney Plus for free, as well as releasing the animated fantasy Raya and the Last Dragon with an option for purchase on Disney Plus instead. The year did have a few major box office hits, including 4 Marvel movies and a new Fast and Furious installment, but it looked like it was going to be another muted year at the box office, at least until the very end of the year. The first real sign of a box office rebound came in December 2021. The joint Disney-Sony production, Spider-Man: No Way Home, opened to massive numbers on its way to becoming the 3rd highest-grossing domestic film of all time. The massive crossover film was the first true event movie of the post-COVID era. Fans showed up in the millions. It showed that there were movies big enough to make people pack into the theaters again. But the problem was that might be all they'd show up for. The domestic box office for 2020 was only $2.3 billion, mostly thanks to the start of the year. 2021 only saw numbers of $4.5 billion, with over 20% of that coming from your friendly neighborhood web-slinger. But 2022 saw signs of hope, with massive hits from the worlds of Avatar, Jurassic World, Batman, and Marvel. They all cleared $300 million, but none could compete with Top Gun: Maverick, a decades-later sequel that became one of the biggest surprise hits in movie history. And the next year saw more hits from the usual franchises, as well as the biggest breakout movie moment of the new era, the double hit of Barbenheimer. Released on the same day, the candy-colored feminist comedy Barbie wound up winning the year. Meanwhile, Christopher Nolan's 3-hour R-rated biopic became one of the highest-grossing R-rated films ever and went on to nearly sweep the Oscars. But despite this, the numbers weren't close to what they used to be. To see the reason, you'd have to look a little further down the charts. 2019 saw a whopping 29 movies cross $100 million at the domestic box office, starting with Avengers: Endgame at the top and going all the way down to Hustlers, a Jennifer Lopez heist comedy. By contrast, 2023, the top year since the pandemic, saw only 25 movies cross the mark. Many were long-delayed releases that lost a huge amount of money due to astronomical budgets. Similarly, 2024 only saw 22 movies hit the mark, and 2025 is well below the pace. By September, only 14 movies hit the mark, with the busy summer season fading into the rearview mirror. The big movies might be doing okay, but the rest of them aren't. Today, the box office is dominated by one word: franchises. The biggest hits are almost all series that can be reliably expected to drop a new installment every few years. Marvel and DC both run massive shared universes, with Marvel spanning multiple studios. And then there's Disney, with Avatar, Star Wars, and several hit franchises like Frozen and Toy Story at its animation divisions. Universal and Illumination have Despicable Me and Jurassic Park. DreamWorks has Shrek on its way back from the swamp, and Vin Diesel hasn't stopped driving those cars in Fast and Furious yet. These and more can generally be counted on to deliver big box office returns, and that leaves relatively little for the rest of the field. One reason that the box office might be declining is because there are fewer movies coming out. If you aren't into big CGI spectacles, there isn't that much for you out there. Some franchises like horror continue to thrive because they typically have smaller budgets and they can get in and out of theaters in several weeks with a profit. Toward the end of the year, prestige films arrive, chasing Oscar buzz, though few become big box office hits. The expectation is they'll quietly recoup the costs on modest budgets. You don't need CGI for Paul Giamatti to take a melancholy journey of self-discovery. But for fans of other iconic genres, the movie theaters just look empty these days. Think back to the 1980s and 1990s. Some of the biggest hits of all time weren't action movies, they were comedies. Who could forget Robin Williams dressing in drag as Mrs. Doubtfire? Or Kevin McAllister violating the Geneva Convention all over the Wet Bandits in Home Alone? Or Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler in, well, whatever those two were doing that month. During the 2000s, there was The Hangover, which saw three dim-witted best friends lose their groom-to-be friend on a weekend in Vegas. It was so huge it spawned a trilogy. All were massive box office hits. And today, you probably won't see anything like that at the box office. A straight comedy hasn't topped the US box office since 2019, when the R-rated coming-of-age hit Good Boys pulled it off. Since then, comedies have all but disappeared from the marquees. The few that were released at good numbers, like Liam Neeson's cop parody The Naked Gun, are still doing muted numbers. Another top genre that used to rule the box office was the rom-com. These were usually lower-budget, down-to-earth movies starring one of the screen queens of the age. Both Julia Roberts and Sandra Bullock made their fame through these movies, and there were some breakout hits in the genre. The independent romantic comedy My Big Fat Greek Wedding became the top-grossing romantic comedy of all time, despite it never hitting #1 at the box office. And of course, the romantic epic Titanic wrote a combination of spectacular effects and a passionate love story to be the top-grossing movie of all time in 1997. It used to be far more common for sober historical dramas to make it to the big screen, even when they weren't directed by Christopher Nolan. Past award winners like Saving Private Ryan, Dances with Wolves, and Forrest Gump would frequently be box office hits. The rule that dominated movie theaters was the 4 quadrants: young men, young women, and older women. Studios tried to make sure they had something for all 4 quadrants in theaters to keep the seats filled. But slowly and surely, that strategy joined those movies in history. The main culprits, if you ask the movie theaters, is streaming. The rise of all-you-can-eat viewing platforms on the internet such as Netflix, Disney+, and Amazon Prime offer people plenty of movies at less than $20 a month. And with the rise of big-screen TVs, there's less difference than ever before between seeing a movie in the theater and seeing it at home. There's also less risk of a kid kicking the back of your seat. Many of the movies that would have gone to theaters are now waiting for you at home. And many genres have disappeared entirely. Most live-action comedies now skip the theaters and head directly to a streaming platform. Adam Sandler inked a Netflix deal in 2020, making the streamer the home for all of his films, and a stage for his family to star with him. The John Cena mistaken identity farce Ricky Stenicki went straight to Amazon. As for romantic comedies, people are spoiled for choice, but not on the big screen. Not only has Netflix debuted a series of hit movies like The Wrong Paris or Lindsay Lohan's Irish Wish, but the Hallmark Channel debuts dozens of its original romantic comedies every holiday season. So it's all down to the franchises. But even some of those are in trouble. Part of the consequence of so many franchises hitting it big was that smaller movies found themselves priced out of theaters. That left the entire industry perched on a few pillars, and the decline is nowhere more obvious than with Disney. After a disappointing end to the last trilogy, Star Wars has taken 6 years off the theaters, returning with a spin-off from the hit streaming series The Mandalorian in 2026. And while some Disney and Pixar animated franchises have been big hits, it's only been the sequels. Attempts at launching new franchises like Encanto, Wish, Elio, and Elemental have all seen muted box office. And not even the king is immune. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, the largest franchise in movie history, reached its peak with Avengers Endgame in 2019, and it's been mixed results ever since. In 2025, several of their movies made decent but unspectacular box office, but they still lost budget due to ballooning budgets. And that's led many box office analysts to suspect they'll start dialing back their output. The budget issue has hit other franchises as well, such as the long-running Mission Impossible franchise starring a seemingly unaging Tom Cruise. And the Xenu-loving Daredevil might be the last of a dying breed, because there really aren't movie stars anymore. In the past, there used to be actors who would drive box office just by showing up, such as Julia Roberts' streak of romantic comedies, or Will Smith's dominance of July 4th every year. Today, movies are sold more on the tagline than on the name above the marquee, and that makes it harder for movies that aren't based on an existing franchise to stand out from the crowd. And theaters say it'll only get harder for them if Hollywood doesn't get its act together. But while the biggest factor in the decline of moviegoing might be the movies themselves, the movie theater experience has a lot of problems going for it as well. The number one being the cost. One of the biggest challenges is price. Tickets for an evening showing can hit $20 in some states. Take a whole family and suddenly the movies feel less like fun and more like a luxury. And that is before you hit the concession stand. Food at the movie theater was always expensive, but it's gotten ridiculous in many places. A bucket of popcorn frequently tops $10, and a cup of soda can be $6 in New Jersey AMC's. Take a family of 5, add popcorn and sodas, and the bill can hit $150 for a night at Minions. No wonder many parents are hoping they can find something to watch on Netflix instead. And that might explain why the biggest breakout animated film of 2025 was Netflix's cartoon adventure K-Pop Demon Hunters. Mom and Dad could pop some Jiffy Pop in the microwave while the kids danced to Soda Pop. And there are ways to save on movie tickets, but that doesn't help the theaters. Trying to get people in seats, many theaters are offering subscription deals patterned after the defunct third-party service MoviePass. The most popular version, AMC A-List, allows people to see up to 4 movies at any AMC theater a week for under $30 a month. If someone subscribes to this service, eats a meal at a fast food place before the movie, and then skips the concession stand, this is one of the most affordable entertainment activities out there. But that kind of frugal strategic moviegoing isn't helping AMC's bottom line. And of course, when you're at the movies, you're at the mercy of other people. We've all been in that theater. Maybe it was an old lady who kept asking her husband, "What did they say?" after every scene. Or maybe it was a group of teenagers in the back that couldn't stop laughing at inappropriate moments. Rude guests can ruin a movie, but it seems to be happening more and more often. In the past year, several viral incidents highlighted the problem. At Wicked, die-hard fans loudly sang along. More infamously, the Minecraft movie drew millions of kids who spent the film screaming "chicken jockey" and pelting the screen with popcorn. This has led to some people saying theaters need to crack down, but some might be going too far in the other direction. The small Alamo Drafthouse chain, known for its upscale vibe and food and drink menu, is famous for its zero-tolerance policy on bad behavior. It's common to see people who talk too much or use their phones in the theaters escorted out. Some people want this to be extended to all theaters, but others find the idea of being policed so aggressively to be stressful and take away from the fun atmosphere. Plus, are any of those teenage managers paid enough to police the next meme sensation? Which means the golden age of moviegoing might be over, and it might not be coming back. It's not likely that movie theaters will go out of business anytime soon, or at least not en masse. The market certainly isn't what it used to be, but it is far from dying. However, the declining numbers have played a key role in getting theaters to raise their prices, which might contribute to driving people away even more. It's not clear which of the 3 major movie chains is in the roughest shape, but if one goes bankrupt, another one might snap it up. And with deregulation in full force again, it's possible the major movie studios might get in on the act. Netflix has been experimenting with buying movie theaters in order to allow more of its movies to qualify for the Oscars with theatrical releases. But are the people coming back anytime soon? The public has spoken at the box office, and what they seem to want is more sequels to their most beloved franchises, and the studios are likely to respond. This might lead to a feast or famine situation, with theaters overflowing for a few key weekends a year and struggling during the slower months. Movies have been seeing their theatrical windows decrease, leaving theaters after only a few weeks and heading to digital rental or streaming. Which is to say, if there's a movie you want to see, better see it quickly. Your local theater might be counting on you. And don't forget the $10 popcorn. The silver screen might be losing its shine, and now even the golden arches are starting to rust. Watch the real reason McDonald's is failing to see why the Happy Meal isn't so happy anymore. Or click on this video instead.